Welcome to Tips and Tricks for July 2023. This month, how to migrate from UnForm version 10 to 10.1. Go to unform.com. Then select Support and then Documentation from the drop-down, under UnForm 10.1. Select either PDF manual or HTML manual. Then click Installation and select Upgrading from 10.0. Here are the things to think about when upgrading from 10.0 to 10.1. The two versions cannot share inbound sources, which are monitored paths and IMAP email accounts. The two versions cannot share TCP ports that can be used to accept raw print jobs as configured in TCP ports in UF100D.ini, UF101D.ini. The two versions cannot share the same service listening ports for client submissions or HTTP access. In summary, it is usually not possible to run 10.0 and 10.1 at the same time on the same system, or at all if you use an email-based inbound source. So in general, you will need to perform the upgrade with 10.0 stopped and disabled. Here are the steps. Obtain an UnForm 10.1 serial number. Unless you are treating this as a new test install, you should have your 10.1 license available to minimize downtime. Obtain this license by contacting sales at synergetic-data.com. Disable UnForm 10.0. On Windows, stop and disable the UnForm 10.0 service. On Linux, run UF100D stop all, and check for the system startup configuration to disable auto startup. If systemctl returns a name, systemctl 100D. If which check config turns a name, run config del UF100D. Optionally, you can uninstall 10.0 using uninstall on Linux or with settings or control panel on Windows. This process removes the UnForm software, but not the rule files or configuration files. Any files you will need to copy to 10.1 are left in place. Install 10.1. Follow the standard installation steps for Linux or Windows. This can be to a new directory or on top of the 10.0 directory. If using the same directory, you won't need to copy many of the required files, but there may be confusion over the UF100** and UF101* files both in the path. You can choose to remove the UF100* files after the new install is fully configured. If a new directory, copy these files from the 10.0 directory. ufarc.dat, ufcgi.dat, ufjobdef.dat, ufoauth.dat, ufsched.dat, rule files. Any files used by the rule files, unless they are full paths, such as image files, copy UF100D.ini to UF101D.ini and UF100C.ini to UF101C.ini. Note on Windows UF101C.ini is found in C, Program Data, SDSI. This will maintain any custom settings you have from 10.0, but also note this will cause 10.1 to use the 10.0 listening ports for client submission and HTTP access. If you would rather use standard 10.1 ports, edit UF101.ini and set port =27400 in defaults, and port =27402 in Apache, and edit UF101C.ini, and set port =27400 in defaults. Also note a standalone client on another system also uses UF101C.ini and should be edited as necessary to match the defaults port in use by the server. If using the default 10.1 ports, be sure to update any HTTP access links and add firewall rules to allow access to the new ports. Also adjust any application functions that use the UF100C client to use UF101C. Archive libraries. If a new directory and you use UnForm archiving and use non-full path library names in rule files or image manager jobs, the 10.0 libraries will need to be moved. Libraries from the 10.0 ARC directory should be moved to the 10.1 ARC directory. Since these are referenced as full paths in the library system, you will need to rename them in the Archive Browser Interface admin. Libraries option once UnForm 10.1 is started. Activate 10.1. Using your 10.1 serial number and PIN, activate this installation. This is important if you've copied live files to 10.1, as there are record count limits in the demo license and it is very likely those will have been exceeded in some of the 10.0 files copied over. Start up 10.1 and run UF101CEV to verify local access and verify access to the HTTP port with your browser. If a new directory was used, now you can rename the library paths from the 10.0 ARC path to the 10.1 ARC path using the Archive Browser Admin Libraries option. If you need additional assistance, from the Support tab, click on Support Portal or call 800-446-7374. If you have questions or suggestions for future tips and tricks, please email Dan Schmitt at dans@synergetic-data.com. For UnForm, tips and tricks. Thank you for viewing. See you next month.